All right, welcome back to another episode. The AI bubble is cracking and the numbers don't lie. While Figma is a real company with real revenue, it's going public at an $18 billion valuation. Anthropic is chasing a $150 billion valuation for a company that's bleeding cash. Meanwhile, Tesla just dropped $16.5 billion on Samsung chips, and VCs are quietly exiting AI investments at a record rate.
So the disconnect between the hype and the reality has never been clearer. Are we watching the same pattern that destroyed crypto investors? The warning signs are flashing red, and today we're going to break down what this means for development and for businesses. Let's dive into this today.
Welcome back to our podcast, guys. My name is McKay Thomas, and I am here with Startup Hack. Yes, this is my father. He has taught me so much about tech and business, and these are conversations that we would have every single day. And we are both working in these industries, and we figured, why not talk about it? So, thank you guys so much for joining our podcast. Startup Hack does everything from AI to architecting your software needs and helping you in any kind of enterprise software development need.
And Meet McKay is everything finance and business. He talks about a lot of trending news around these subjects. So you definitely got to make sure you're subscribed to Meet McKay as well.
Totally. Sweet. Well, thank you so much. All right, let's hop into it. What is the very first thing that catches your eye this morning in terms of AI, business news, tech news? What's one of the most glaring things that's calling you out?
Well, I mean, AI news cycle is obviously just going. Everything's AI right now. AI this, AI this, AI this. And so even so much so that we have Tesla, who just announced a massive chip deal with Samsung for, guess what? An AI chip, right? It's the AI chip for their cars. And it's funny because they're looking so far into the future that this is the AI6 chip that they're talking about. They're not even talking about the AI5 chip, which is currently actually just starting production, but the AI6 chip is what's being announced here. And they announced a $15.5 billion deal for Samsung to produce these chips here in the US. So this is a huge win for everybody who's trying to win on the US. You know, we know that Elon Musk and Trump kind of parted ways, and Musk was upset because of the amount of debt that the country's taking on. So he said, you know what? I got to go out there and earn some money to pay for some of this. And this is a great example of it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. He's building these AI6 chips in the US, from what I understand, really close to Elon's house, which he said is oddly convenient. But it's not only a huge win for Tesla, and obviously Samsung is getting a massive contract out of this, but it's bringing jobs to the US, which is kind of a win for Trump, even though it's a win for everyone. It's a win for everybody, but that's what Trump wanted by doing all these tariffs. And we know that Elon wasn't a big fan of these tariffs, mainly because it hurt his personal interests. So, in a weird way, this is kind of accomplishing what Trump wanted. Not that bringing jobs to the U.S. is a bad thing, but I just figured that was an interesting little piece there. Now, my biggest question to you is, we're seeing the integration of software and hardware, and I think we've kind of talked about it briefly. You're going to see a lot of these software companies have these insane valuations, and we'll talk about them more. But what I think you're going to see stick around is when you can take software and integrate it with hardware, like a real usable product that the customer can actually use. How do you hardware is getting phased out so quickly? I believe we both have Teslas that are hardware 3, they're hardware 4. They've already done hardware 5 with TSMC, as you can see here,
Yep.
out of the Arizona facility, which isn't too far away from you. And
Yep.
then now they're working on hardware 6. So how do you incentivize customers that just spent X amount on a car, and now you're telling them that their hardware is going to be outdated by 3 generations? Like, how do you fix that problem? Like, you've done a lot of work with routers and upgrading hardware and things like that. How do you help your customer base not feel left behind?
It's a good question. I'm not sure exactly how, and Musk has promised that he will for people like myself. So I bought FSD, paid full price for it in March of 2020. And so I was a hardware 3 purchaser. So I'm definitely, I'm driving around my Model 3. It's got FSD 12 on it, which is really good. But man, I would love to get the FSD 13, which it requires hardware 4. And like you said, now they're talking about hardware 5, and this deal is for even hardware 6. So yeah, Musk is going to have an interesting time trying to figure out how he's going to backgrade all of these. I mean, it's an expensive upgrade. Most analysts are estimating it to be about $2,500 per car worth of cost. So this is a big deal for Tesla. Musk has promised that he will figure out a way. I'd be curious to see if he honors that promise. In his most recent podcast, I loved his quote because he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that he's really good at building things, not very good at estimating time frames.
Yeah.
And he listed that as one of his own weaknesses. He called that out himself.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I think this is a huge deal. I think it will be a big win for the US. I think it'll be a big win for Samsung. I personally think that Tesla is one of the closest to real AI. The way they've built their neural network with FSD, the way that FSD has continued to prove out that actually the image works better than LiDAR, which is a super controversial statement that I just made. But there's a lot of actually proof that's coming to show that LiDAR has a lot of weaknesses. And so it's an interesting part. And I think, they're tripling, they're like 6 timesing down now on this hardware to be going this far out into the future.
Yeah.
So what it means for the past customers is going to kind of still be yet to seen.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tricky thing, but at the same time, you don't want to let the past customers hold you back from trying to innovate in the future. So he talks about Samsung's giant new Texas fab will be dedicated to making Tesla's next generation AI6 chip. The strategic importance of this is hard to overstate. Samsung is also currently making the AI4. TSMC will make AI5, which just finished design initially in Taiwan and then Arizona. So he's thinking a couple of years ahead, which in terms of technology and hardware is probably smart, and getting suppliers in order. Like something that Elon has said himself is that he knows supply chains and manufacturing probably better than anybody on earth. And I actually believe him. So seeing him think this far ahead is really interesting because you can just tell how much money Tesla will continue to pour into R&D when it comes to these chips. And something that I want to go back to this TechCrunch piece was the difference with this AI6 chip is that it's not only going to be AI5 is primarily built for FSD, but I believe it says the AI6 chip right here will be FSD as well as Tesla's Optimus humanoid robots. And it's all the way to high performance AI training in the data centers. So you're seeing this merge not just for FSD now, but it'll be included in Optimus as well as their high performance in AI training for the data centers. What are these AI6 chips going to look like? Like, what's the difference between an AI6 chip and for example, just for layman's terms, like a lot of people are thinking, oh, Nvidia H100s. What's the difference between this and an H100? Like, I know it's completely different, but would you mind spelling out the difference for me?
So we don't really know a lot about the hardware on these yet, but we do know one thing is that they've been talking a lot about the integration of Grok into all of their different chips, right? And so whether they're talking about Grok being integrated into the humanoid robot, they're talking about it being integrated into cars, even the Grok rollout, to Elon's point, has been much slower than he originally even said. But we are starting to get people who have it rolled out. Right now, the Grok is pretty much just an API call across the wire because you have to have their premium data service built into your car. But they're going to try to bring that processing closer and closer and closer to the user. And so this is actually a move that we predicted years ago, but it's one that AI or the Apple missed on. They tried to do it too early. It's the reason we saw Apple Intelligence fail so much. Elon's trying to predict for this in the future. And what he's doing is he's trying to move that processing out of the cloud, out of these huge super data centers, which move them out of those data centers and closer to the individual machines. So this will allow him to do the processing for the AI in the car or in the robot or whatever that's going to be, so that he can do that processing right there. Because the interesting part about this also is that in that bringing it closer and closer, one of the huge limitations that every single big leader of the Mag 7 says right now is that we are hitting an energy problem around the data centers. These new data centers they're building take as much power as an entire city to process. So how do you solve that problem? You distribute it, right? In computing, if we know there's too much processing at the center, we distribute the computing out to smaller pieces. That's what these guys are trying to do by building a really powerful AI chip. That's what Elon's doing to push that processing down to the individual, to the smaller pieces as much as possible. So again, we don't have the design on this yet, but my guess is based on trends in industry, that's what this would do.
Totally. Something I'm trying to find the article, but I can't quite find it. Jensen Wang was talking about how this new Nvidia chip that they're working on, a big focus was the pulling less power from the grid. And I believe I can't find the article right now, but it'd be a 30% increase in efficiency on power. So you're probably, tell me if I'm wrong, but are you going to see more of a shift from horsepower to efficiency?
Yes, that's definitely where we're going. In fact, Google just recently announced a transformer killer. I'm doing a video on it this week. A transformer killer that's actually going to reduce the base. So when ChatGPT came out a few years ago, the big innovations here was RAG and transformers. This is LLMs have been around for about 15 years. The technology itself isn't new, but the transformer is one of the things, but it's super processing intensive. And that's what's chewing up all the power in these AI data centers. And so they're going to have to come up with a different way to do the transformer. And that's the race right now. So DeepMind's already working on this. They say they released a paper announcing it. Now, again, it's kind of like solar and battery where you hear these announcements all the time and then you don't really ever see them hit the market. So, I'm waiting to see it hit it. But this is the race, is to bring that processing down. Now, Huang's saying that because they do need more power. And he is going to say that it's going to be more efficient. So far, every single chip they have produced so far has only been more hungry. I know the recent 5 series, people are seriously having trouble powering them. There isn't a standard PC that's powerful enough to process or to run 2 of the 5090 graphics cards. They're just literally like, you'd have to have a 2000 watt power supply, and they just don't even make those. So so far, like Huang saying that, I mean, that's what he's already trying to sell, and that's important for him. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but there's some salesmanship there.
Totally. And while we're talking about Nvidia, I want to go ahead and share this because I think it's absolutely crazy. Nvidia just became the first stock in history to hit 4.3 trillion. A few weeks ago, they were the first stock to hit 4 trillion. Now they're the first stock in history to hit 4.3 trillion. This makes Nvidia $500 billion larger than Microsoft, which is in second place for the largest company in the world. 500 billion. The craziest part is obviously the Kobeissi letters stating that the AI revolution has barely even started. So,
well, and Nvidia is in the special place because always the goal is you never want to be the one selling gold, you want to be the one selling the shovel, right? And that's what Nvidia is doing. They're not selling gold, they aren't selling the AI, they're selling the shovel. Everybody, so this market hype, it's an arms race for Nvidia cards.
Yeah.
I mean, even the war between us and China, if you get into that subject, is going to be the difference of us having more Nvidia chips. Everyone else is lagging behind. Intel missed on this. AMD is desperately trying to catch up, and they're trying to keep themselves in the game, but like Nvidia is just killing everybody on this, and so everybody's reliant on them.
Totally. And do you think that we talk about the AI bubble bursting and that these productless AI ventures are going to go away? Do you think that affects Nvidia at all?
So the bubble burst doesn't mean people are going to go away. Let's kind of talk about some of these valuations. And I don't know if you want to bring some of these up.
Yeah, which one do you want to go with?
So let's just talk about Figma. So Figma's talking about an IPO this week, right? And the interesting thing about Figma's IPO is they're IPOing, and Figma's one of the most revenue generating companies off of AI, other than like one of the big AI companies themselves. So I think they're one who has integrated real AI value into their product, and yet they're IPOing at 18.8 billion, or you're seeing different numbers, 16 to 8. Let's call it 16 to 18 billion.
It fluctuates,
right?
16 to 18.
Yeah, let's call it 16 to 18. They're at a 46% revenue growth. They have $50 million in profit, right? Like they're a really good, strong company, and yet their valuation, I mean, is still strong because on a $50 million profit to a $19 billion valuation is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But then you look at Anthropic this week, who's trying to raise, and they're raising on a $150 billion valuation off of $1 billion of revenue. That's 150x revenue.
I'll push back a little bit there. They did have $1 billion in revenue, but according to them, they are now at a $4 billion annual run rate. And just from last month to this month, it says that they went from 3 to 4 billion. So the revenue is growing. The report also says that the company's annualized revenue had jumped from 3 billion to 4 billion in the previous month. So, but to your point, Figma's IPOing at a 22 times revenue, which is still rich, but at the top of the market in this AI boom, fine. 22 times revenue, it's insane, but they have a profit. They just started to hit a profit. But $50 million on a $16 billion IPO, that's not much to write home about. It's profit, but they probably got their books nice and pretty right before their IPO so they could show a profit so that they weren't one of these profitless companies IPOing. Because if they're a profitless tech company, then everybody kind of writes them off sometimes. But when it comes to a profit, a company that's generating profit, and it's going to IPO, you see a lot more people taking it seriously because it's like, oh, wow, we could actually see some real revenue coming down and some real earnings per share. However, Anthropic, I couldn't find how much they're burning right now, but they are seeking a valuation of $150 billion. This is up more than double from its previous valuation at $61 billion. And they're looking to raise the cash of 3 to 5 billion. So the cash is different, obviously, from the valuation. But even at their $4 billion revenue mark, that's 48 times revenue that they're trying to raise at, which is
Which
crazy. So it's more than double at what Figma is trying to raise revenue. It's trying to
and,
IPO at. So yeah,
and
go
the
ahead.
and the interesting part here is that, and there's a couple of things. So as you read into this, and I say pretty plugged into this topic here, Claude, or Anthropic just raised the value of they just lowered the value of how much they're giving per token for
I
each
saw that.
subscription. So
I
they
actually got an
just
email. Let me see if
announced
I can
this.
pull it up while you're saying that.
Well, I just got the announcement in my email, I think yesterday morning. It was
Yeah, me
like,
too. Let me
hey,
pull it up.
yeah, and it's like, hey, by the way, and it's almost a fourth of the token limits. And they're doing some funny math because it's like they moved it off a daily limit to a monthly limit. But if you do the math, you're getting about a fourth of the tokens for the same cost. So this is signs of the bubble bursting. So we talked about the bubble bursting. I want to talk about that because you said bubble bursting equates things going away. That's not it. Let's talk about the dot-com bubble burst, right? What happened? There was every company running out there being like, hey, I got a .com on my name. I can raise $10 million, right? And this is what happened in the early 2000, like 2000, 2001. And then what happened was the market tanked and valuations tanked. And then the only people left were companies that actually had real value. Right. And suddenly revenue became a real thing and a lot of other things, because like even Yahoo crashed in this state because they were so big and they had so many clicks, but they hadn't yet translated it to revenue. And so the same thing is what came out of that, the internet. Right. So it's the same reason why Nvidia is going to sail through this, because AI is not going to go away. And so me saying the bubble burst so frequently, people are like, you're so wrong. The bubble burst. You can't say the bubble burst. AI is not going anywhere. You're right. It's not going anywhere. But we are going to see these profitless companies disappear. Valuations are going to be questioned, just like we are this morning, right? Valuations are going to be questioned, and people are going to be like, hey, look, you got to show us revenue. There's got to actually be a business model here, because Futurism reported that the first half of the financial year is behind us, and there was people. The whole U.S. has dumped $104 billion into AI companies so far this year, which is as much. So just halfway this year is as much as they'd invested in 2024. But yet VCs are starting to get return because people are starting to exit via these large, so like in this Anthropic, there will be VCs that actually exit in it. And they're seeing about a quarter of their investments back, even on valuation. So we're seeing that investors are starting to go, wait a minute, there might not be quite this much money. These are early signs of a bubble burst, right? So you and I are some of the ones who are going to watch the market, watch the signs, watch these trends. You're going to see a bubble burst. What that means is the tech is going to stay, which is why Nvidia is going to ride this rocket ship, right? Because they're still the best producers of it. There's a valuable technology here, but it's been overhyped and overpumped in the stock market or in the VC world. The stock market is a lot more smart, right? That's the reason why you're seeing, even though, Figma is a 22, it's nowhere near the almost 50 to 100x valuation that Anthropic's trying to get.
Yeah, totally. What It's going to be interesting to see that investor that got 20, like they got a 25% haircut on his investment, let's say. It's going to be interesting. Is he going to redeploy that? Like, is he going to stay out of these revenue-less companies now? I'm not revenue-less, but these profitless companies now. And is he going to invest into Tesla that has real AI to show for? So, like, are the Mag 7 going to continue to boom? When you say bubble bursting, I can kind of connect some dots where it's like, okay, who would I rather invest in? Somebody that has a $50 million profit, Figma, or should I invest into the largest EV maker and the leader in AI and robotics? So I will be interested to see if the Mag 7 will continue to ride this wave, because you're going to see, I think you'll see a lot of these smaller revenueless and profitless and productless companies kind of fade away a little bit as these VCs pull their money out. So I think you're spot on there, and only time will tell. So if you guys haven't yet, consider subscribing, because we'll track this stuff every week. Every Tuesday morning we'll be here. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments. Cool. What do you got next?
Well, so one really other quick note about this before we move on from it.
Sure.
What I think is going to happen with these is I think you're going to see the company, and you're already seeing it, right? We're seeing companies who aren't real start to fall off. Anthropic is real. They have real tech. They have some of the best AI out there. They've not only that, they've built to a big, the connectors into their AI and the tools around AI is where the strength of Anthropic is going to run. Will Anthropic remain? Yes. But I could see an Apple or somebody like that swooping in and buying an Anthropic, somebody who's behind and wants to be able to jump in. And I think that's what you're going to start seeing. I think you're going to start seeing some of these Mag 7s swoop in and purchase. And you're already starting to see it, right? You saw Google like part and parcel out and steal a whole bunch of the talent in a kind of an acquisition from Windsurfer, right? And you saw some of these other ones. I think you're going to keep seeing that over the rest of 2025 and into 2026. You're going to see companies who are going to start struggling as VCs don't re-up these crazy round valuations, and the Mag 7 who has plenty of money to burn, right? Because Microsoft's, like, for instance, is just posting $100 billion of revenue this year, right? They could come in and swoop in and easily purchase Anthropic, right? For a big number, for 1 year's worth of revenue, right? Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think you're going to see the Mag 7, a lot of these other ones swoop in, or we could see the huge talent war just to just basically, part these out, because it's a lot easier to steal the talent with a paycheck than it is to go through all the red tape of purchasing a company.
Totally. And especially private companies that I think you'll see a lot of acquisitions of. Purchasing a public company is fairly difficult, fairly involved, and very expensive. As Elon found out buying Twitter. I think buying these private companies, I think you're right. Do you think Google is do you think Google's going to want to purchase one of these big players? Like, is their search revenue in danger, or do you think that's not really too big of Google's concern right now?
I don't think there's a lot that rattles Google. When their AI tools were, man, I just totally blanked on what they were called before. They had a really
Gemini?
terrible name. What's that?
Gemini?
Well, that's their current product line. I forgot what they called it when before it really hit the big one.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I forgot.
but DeepMind has been trying to build AI for a long time. But right now, the ratio of money going in versus the ratio of money going out for AI is 3-to-1. And with companies starting to raise money, you can see this, right? We've seen the shift with Cursor, with Claude Code, with Claude. We've seen this. All the products are now lowering their value and raising their cost, right? Even when Grok 4 was released, they released the Super Grok, or the Grok Heavy, with $300 a month, right? And so, everybody was like, $300 a month is crazy. And Elon Musk still losing money. They don't care. So these valuations are going to continue to do this. But I think as we start to see people question this, and you're seeing the early signs of the bubble starting to crack, because they're starting to realize they're going to have to do this. The hype train and the building on hype is going away. And that kind of leads us into where we can talk a little bit about, some things. It's been funny to watch Sam Altman shift his tune over the years, right? When ChatGPT first hit, in 2022, it was all about AGI, right? For 2022, 2023 is all about AGI. 24, it started to be like, oh, well, we're going to build these really impressive tools that are going to 100x developers. And now, just recently, we even saw Sam Altman say, hey, we need thousands more developers, which tells you like development's not going away, right? And so Sam's been definitely changing his tune. I think you have a clip for us.
Yeah, I do.
Sam saying some interesting stuff.
Before we hit the clip, I want to go ahead and ask you about this. Let me go ahead and share my screen on.
Sure.
I think let me see if I have this correct. Yeah, it is. Okay. Let me go ahead and share this with you. So this isn't confirmed, and so take it with a grain of salt. I don't know. Okay, you can see my screen. Yep. So this is GPT-5 is reportedly dropping next week, and they're claiming that it's gonna have a 1 million token input window, 100K output tokens, MCP support, parallel tool calls, dynamic short and long reasoning, uses code interpreter and other tools. How do you think GPT-5 is going to compare to Grok 4?
So let's break down each one of these, because one of the biggest things that everybody is going to tell you that GPT-4 flopped, and the reason why is because their hallucination rates were through the roof. Their hallucination rates were reported in the 43%, and that's their own reporting. If you think I'm just bagging on them, that's actually their report said that 43% of their searches came up with hallucinations. So what they're going to do with that very top line, they're continuing to just cast caution to the wind. Their hallucination rates are going to continue to be high. When you just go obscenely large on your input, your hallucination is just going to go out.
And when you
like
say
crazy.
hallucination rate, can you clarify what that means?
So a hallucination is when, so remember how AI works. AI works off of pattern matching. It's not actually thinking. It's just doing pattern matching, where it just takes these mesh of matrices and it's actually doing search against them to find what's closest as possible. So when it can't find an exact match, it's going to grab the closest thing. Well, the closest thing frequently means it's just making word salad, which usually just it comes up and we call it hallucinations, which is where it just takes stuff and makes it up, right? Most of the times it's nonsensical. A lot of times it'll sound really like, and that's one of the problems with AI is it's super convincing because it sounds really logical, but it actually is completely not factual, right? And that's when you see stuff where you're like, wait, that's totally wrong, right? And so that's the hallucination problem that we're talking about here.
Got it.
So that part here, I'm curious to see if this is true. Again, this is an early report, so it's anybody's best guess. But like, if this is actually the case, it means that most likely OpenAI is still just saying, screw it, we don't care about the hallucination rate. We're just going to go big anyways, right? Grok's hallucination was low, but their token input size wasn't this large.
What does that mean? What does token input window mean and output tokens mean?
So the input means how much it can take in to then reason against, right? And so how many token, a million token input is a huge amount. This means you could dump like an entire encyclopedia into it, have it reason against, and give you 100K token output, means then how much it can put out, all with like basically kind of one request, right?
And how much is one token? Is that like one query?
So it's really, tokens are really a vague thing. There's a lot of people really hating on the AI sector because they're allowed to hide a lot behind what a token is, right? And so what one person denotes a token, what another person does, even in different topics. So if I'm coding, a token might be a line of code. It could be a function of, a function block. If you're, a writer, it might be a paragraph. It might be a sentence, right? And so a token is really a vague input. And part of the thing that people are starting to see, it's kind of like when you go to the grocery store and the box of cereal costs the same amount, but the box got smaller. This allows them to kind of cheat on the token size a little bit because nobody can really question what a token is, right? It's a really vague metric that they use to basically like kind of give a thought, or it's really a vague, kind of context of measurement. But really where the strength of these large AI systems is that second point, the MCP support, and parallel tools, right? Because that's the ability,
What is MCP support? And like, what can you explain like what that means and then why you think it's important?
So MCP stands for model context protocol, right? And so this is how LLMs, the thing that does the reasoning and the logic, connects out to its data sources, right? So if you're going to say a weather and you want to say, hey, give me all the, almanac of the weather and what I think the weather is going to be tomorrow based on previous history, the MCP is what connects the LLM, which may not be trained on all the data of the weather patterns for forever, to connect out to the internet and go get that information. So the MCP is the connector that allows it to connect out to these things. So the parallel tool calls, right? And MCP support and parallel tool calls is a huge part, because then you can actually connect even your own things. So MCP allows me to connect my own things into the system. Again, this is another one of those, an example I use on my channel all the time is like in Jurassic Park, where Malcolm in the original Jurassic Park was like, like yelling at the scientists and was like, you were so excited about the fact that you could build these dinosaurs, you didn't think about whether you should. And this is what actually happens a lot. All the major data breaches are coming in. Every new hack that's come out really in the last 12 months have been from these MCP, because people connect stuff to AI and they don't think about the repercussions of connecting their production database per se. So we recently saw a tool that wiped out somebody's production database, and they made this huge public stink about it. And I'm sitting here thinking, who in the heck would connect their production database to one of these
Yeah.
AI tools? So that's what MCP support is.
Are you talking about the data breach with the driver's licenses?
That's a different one, but that was also because of MCP. Yes.
Okay. I would, if you have a second, maybe let's finish this up, and then maybe if we have time, we can dive into that. Okay. So dynamic short and long reasoning.
So there's a lot of skepticisms about reasoning right now, and I'm actually doing a full video on it this week on my channel. And so this to me also shows that he's trying to hit some buzzwords here, because more and more MIT and Harvard and a handful of other have just both recently released papers stating that reasoning doesn't work because of the first problem, the problem with hallucinations. As soon as you get one, so reasoning means chain of thought. It means what it does is it does one LLM process, then it changes it to a second process, then it changes it to a second process. And in the best case scenario, it will work. The problem is when you get any high rate of hallucinations in that first step of processing, the fourth step of processing becomes just terrible, like just horrible, because it's processing against partial hallucinations. And they try to put things in place to detect against the hallucinations in each step to prevent against that, but they can't. Like it doesn't work. And they're showing that reasoning actually is just more of a way for these large places to chew up your tokens, which is what they charge you against. So it's actually a way for them to overcharge you and make it think it's doing better. And so there's a lot of skepticism around the reasoning models right now.
Gotcha. Okay. And then to wrap it up, what's that bottom one? The uses code interpreter and other tools. Like, is that just kind of
So they're trying to go after Claude. They're trying to go after or Claude Code. They're trying to go after Cursor. They're trying to go after Microsoft GitHub Copilot. They're trying to attract the developers. Particularly, I don't know any developers who use ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the worst one. So for everybody within the sound of my voice, go use one of the other systems. I'm a fan of Claude. I like Gemini Pro, any of these, but OpenAI is desperately losing the corporate battle and the developer battle. They're losing both of those, and they know it. So they're going to try to continue to go after this. Their coding tools benchmark dead last in pretty much every single test I've ever seen.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear your ChatGPT 5 review, and stack it against Grok 4 to kind of see what we get. If we have time, I would love to get your take on the data breach that happened with the pretty much. I think it's the #1 app in the App Store right now. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and I want to get your take on it because I think it's kind of funny. I saw somebody blaming on vibe code culture. That vibe code culture is leading to a lot of security vulnerabilities. So there's this anonymous dating app that people are using for advice, and apparently on Friday they suffered a massive data breach, which gave hackers access to 72,000 images. What happened here?
It's exactly what you said. Suddenly everybody's a developer now, right? And so vibe coding, for those who aren't familiar with what vibe coding is, vibe coding means it was a term coined by Andrei Karpathy, who's one of the best minds of AI. But even he said, look, this is great. It can write the code. You still need architects to review everything you're doing, and you still have to follow best practices. This is an example of somebody who jumped in, grabbed one of the latest vibe code tools, and there's a lot of them, and they are fun. Go use them. I encourage people to use them, but you don't just take that code and slap it into production. You don't do that any more than you would go take a legal brief that ChatGPT gave to you and throw it before the Supreme Court, right? Like, as absurd as that sounds, this is what these people are doing. They're going in their vibe coding to have it build tools for them. Then they're not even having these checked against sound engineering practices, which have been around for 3 decades at this point, to put things into production. They're not following any of that. And they're like, woohoo, I can code. Let's put it in the App Store. And sure enough, they got breached. Surprise.
And do you know, it seems like a fairly easy, like it didn't seem like a very intense hack, like you're hacking the Pentagon or something like that. It seemed like fairly mundane that they just left an exposed API. Do you know the technically what happened?
Yeah, it's really simple. So you have your app, and it communicates to the backend server via what's called an API, an application programmable interface, right? And so your API is how your applications communicate to their servers. What it means is they're APIs, and there's some standard protocols for building those APIs where you authenticate every single request, so you know who's making that call. They'd left a bunch of them exposed. This is like engineering 101. Like, this is like, I mean, this would be like a bank who's like, yeah, sure, we let anybody come in and touch the teller. Like, it's just kind of, it sounds that dumb if you're an engineer. And so the fact that they would put this into production just shows how much it goes right back to that part again, right? You know, Malcolm saying, hey, you were so, interested in the fact that you could do it. You didn't think of if you should. And this is that example where dinosaur just ate somebody.
Yeah. Terrible. You hate to see data breaches, but it's a hard lesson to learn. Cool. Well, I think we have one more clip. If you have time, it's about a minute and 45-second clip. Do you have time?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So this is a clip from Sam Altman that he talks about the he kind of says the quiet part out loud, which is kind of unusual for Sam Altman. But like you said, he's been more and more open about it. Sam Altman says the quiet part out loud here, and I want to hear what Startup Hack thinks about this, as well as what you guys think down in the comments. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely leave comments. We love comments while he's getting this up. My favorite thing is when people leave comments.
Are you able to? Let me share this one. There we go. Okay, cool. You should be. Are you able to see that now?
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's play it.
Certainly need a legal or a policy framework for AI. One example that we've been thinking about a lot, this is like maybe not quite what you're asking. This is like a very human-centric version of that question. People talk about the most personal shit in their lives to ChatGPT. It's, people use it, young people especially, like use it as a therapist, a life coach, having these relationship problems. What should I do? And right now, if you talk to a therapist or a lawyer or a doctor about those problems, there's like legal privilege for it. There's doctor-patient confidentiality, there's legal confidentiality, whatever. And we haven't figured that out yet for when you talk to ChatGPT. So if you go talk to ChatGPT about your most sensitive stuff, and then there's like a lawsuit or whatever, like we could be required to produce that. And I think that's very screwed up. I think we should have like the same concept of privacy for your conversations with AI that we do with a therapist or whatever. And no one had to think about that even a year ago. And now I think it's this huge issue of like, how are we going to treat the laws around this?
Well, do you think there should be like kind of like a slowing things down before we move there, kind of? Because yeah, that is kind of wild. It's one of the reasons I get scared sometimes to use certain AI stuff, because I don't know how much personal information I want to put in, because I don't know who's going to have it.
I think we need this point addressed with some urgency. And the policymakers I've talked to about it like broadly agree. It's new, and now we got to do it quickly. Do you talk to ChatGPT?
I don't talk to it that much.
Because of this.
I think it is. It's because it's like,
I think it makes sense.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop the clip there. I'm actually surprised that Sam Altman said that out loud, because it's what a lot of people are thinking. So I have a couple of questions. One, should there be AI client confidentiality? And two, is this just ChatGPT? Is this all AI? And three, like, what do you do about it?
So here's the problem, is that we have tons of regulations around how IT, or about, how IT companies run, right? And part of that is that we have to retain logs. So there's HIPAA, there's SOC, there's all these, various high trust, there's all these various things. And in that case, because they're actually now talking about patient data, this is what would fall under high trust, right? So this is a security level at which you have to be maintaining logs, you have to be maintaining data, you have to be maintaining records, and in secure ways. Altman is butthurt about this right now, because they're getting slapped with a whole bunch of lawsuits right now, because they didn't retain data, and they were saying, well, we can't because it's, privacy and all this stuff. And it went all the way up, and the lawsuits came down and said, no, you have to still follow best IT practices. And so he's upset about that, because he wants to be above the law. That's one of the things you'll definitely know about Altman. He definitely thinks he's above the law. So the problem of this is, this would be Pandora's box. Like, if these guys got to get away with saying, oh, wait, it's private, so therefore we can't be storing this and all this stuff, they would be getting away away with murder. They quite literally, actually, they would be able to have a blank check to do whatever they want. And that's terrifying for companies with this much processing power, which with a processing power that the world has literally never seen before. These AI companies have more processing than we have ever harnessed into power before, and they would be allowed to just run free. And so I, for one, think it's a terrible idea. And privacy experts out there are just, and so it's a difficult thing because yes, we need to be able to set up rules and structure around it. But at the same time, his whole premise is, hey guys, you better be careful because if whatever you say could get subpoenaed. And that's true. But that's kind of a good thing. Now, it's a good and a bad, and I understand both. And so we could probably take a whole podcast on this because Altman doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be controlled. That's the long and short of it. He does not want to be put on a leash, and this one thing will put them on a leash more than almost anything else.
The being able to having to turn over records. So you're not a fan of having like AI client confidentiality.
It should follow the exact same practices that HIPAA and high trust use today, and he doesn't like being held to that.
Got it. Okay. So you're saying if he wants to have that privilege, it requires a lot more effort on his end.
Absolutely.
Got it.
They can be very flippant with the data right now, which they are, and every AI company is. They're extremely flippant with their data security practices. It's very easy to get AI to spit back out information. And so like I, for one, would never put anything into the public cloud. Like I build all my stuff on-prem if you need data to stay secure. So what you're going to see is you're going to see specific, and this is part of the bubble bursting. You're going to see industries niche down who are going to become an AI therapist because they're going to follow all of those HIPAA and high trust practices. And then that is when you could go talk to, could it be subpoenaed into a court? Yeah, that's true for even your therapist though. Your therapist can actually eventually be subpoenaed if it got high enough, right? Those things can happen. So, but then it would fall under that law. By trying to become everything, ChatGPT can never do that.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you for your take on that. It's a really intense topic right now, and I know a lot of people are wondering about it. So thank you. Well, guys, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, consider subscribing. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments. Again, my name is McKay, and I'm here with Startup Hack, where we talk business, we talk tech, we talk finance, and everything in between. These are conversations that, yes, he is my father. We'd have around the kitchen table. We love it. We look forward to these every Tuesday morning. So consider subscribing. Startup Hack, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it. Just, as always, any help that we can do with your custom software, reach out to startuphack.com/Spencer. And otherwise, we'll look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.